This is my end of year wrap up. This is my end of year discussion. This is where I answer a lot of questions that maybe I haven't talked about in the past, sort of wrap up things. It's really not a look at the 2023 and what happened in 2023 and any of the dramas around that. Really, it's not really about that. It's about what's happening going forward into 2024. I'm going to put up a poll. Feel free to take part in that poll. I would ask people to put into the chat if you have questions that you would like me to discuss or answer, or talk about in some way. That be put as a hashtag question in capitals, so I know that it's standing out. I have a lot of notes in front of me. I'm going to get started, so grab some food, some drink, make sure you're comfortable, and hopefully I'm covering all the topics that people was hoping I was going to cover. Let's see if this works. All right, let's get started. Hi, welcome to How to RPG. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about role-playing games, tabletop role-playing games, the future of tabletop role-playing games going into 2024, and also on top of that, because if we talk about tabletop role-playing games, we've also got to talk about Dungeons and Dragons 2024 as well. So those are the sorts of things I want to talk. I want this to be a much more positive discussion than what I've seen taking place. I don't know if that's going to be possible. I've really worked hard to sort of break things apart and talk about some of the topics that have been cropping up, and what they're probably going to turn into going into the future. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm going to cover right now in terms of the questions that I'm going to answer. I'm going to do that right now so you know exactly what I'm going to cover. I'm going to drop each question as I answer them into the chat so that it stands out so you know where I'm starting to talk about it. So I'm going to talk about what are the new tabletop role-playing games being released in 2024 in particular, but possibly 2025 because schedules can change. So that's the first question I'm going to address. I'm also going to talk about will third-party publishers expand in the year coming 2024. I'm going to talk about that and what's going on. I want to talk about will I be playing different tabletop role-playing game systems in 2024? And to a certain degree, not just me, but will other people be playing different tabletop role-playing games or systems in 2024 going forward? The other question I have that I think people are wanting to sort of talk about, and that is physical books. Now, will physical books or Dungeons and Dragons books or tabletop role-playing books, the physical books, are they going to stop publishing these things coming into the future years? Whether that's next year or the year after, so I'm going to talk about that a little bit. I want to cover the topic of artificial intelligence. What will happen with artificial intelligence being used in a tabletop role-playing game product? So I was going to cover that topic as well. What changes are happening in the tabletop role-playing game community? So that's the social media, the community at large, YouTube, content creators, what's going on there as well, because I have a little bit of information on that. I want to talk about what official Dungeons and Dragons books Wizards of the Coast will release in 2024. So I'm going to go through the releases, what release dates we have, what books there are. I'll go over that very briefly. Will the new 2024 revised Dungeons & Dragons 5e core rulebooks, will they be as popular as they were back in 2014 when the books were first released? I'm going to talk about that a little bit. We're also, because it probably is going to come up eventually, and that is, will there be another Dungeons & Dragons movie made? I think a lot of people are asking that question, so I wanted to talk about that as well because I have a bit of information on that. Will Hasbro have to file for bankruptcy in the coming years? Now, whether that's next year or the year after, I'm going to have a discussion around that. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it because I feel like it's very negative and it's also not a very pretty sight. The last question is, what are my plans for what I'm doing on my channel, How to RPG, in 2024? So, like anything, I will wrap that up. That will be the last thing I cover. Now, because there is so much that I'm going to be discussing, as I said, each question I will drop or cut and paste into the chat so you know what topic I'm talking about. That means that if you want me to talk about something that I haven't discussed right now or mentioned right now, you need to use the live chat box, okay? And hashtag question. So this is probably how I would do it. Hashtag question, okay? Please, for any questions I don't cover, okay? And I will do my best. That is the best way to make them stand out, because there's no way I'm going to be able to read all of the comments in the chat. It's just not going to work. Hello, Fred Huber. Fred Huber is a patron. Thank you for being here. Yes, we'll get to that, Fred. We will definitely get to that. And yes, we'll we'll see. I don't know about that. If you hashtag question and you're specific, maybe I'll talk about that as well. But we'll see. Anyway, that's to be done. Let's start off with the first question that we have for today, and that is really about what sort of new tabletop role-playing games are going to be released in 2024 and possibly 2025, considering what we're dealing with. Schedules can change. It's not always possible to do exactly what we want when we want. And I think that is, I don't even know if I can do the hashtag, because I'm going in and out. It's going to be a pain in the butt. I don't want to do that if I can help it. So I won't. So I'm just going to just copy and paste it in the future. Use my mouse, not my bum. All right. So I'll get to your questions in a second. I'll add them to let's deal with the first thing. So what are the new tabletop role-playing games being released in 2024? Well, we have Daggerheart by the Critical Role team. Now, they've already put out a game, but this Daggerheart is really an attempt. I suspect Daggerheart is going to be the game that Critical Role plays more often than anything else. But that's speculation on my part. There's been a lot of controversy around Daggerheart. I don't know that we need to worry too much about that sort of thing. Whether you're repurposing an existing rule system and calling it something else, particularly when it's openly available and the creators are basically saying it's all right to do whatever you want to do with this, I don't know that we should be getting upset about that sort of thing. So Tarian Press is going to be working on this, and there are some people who are working towards doing this. I think there's nothing wrong with Daggerheart. Well, let's see what the final product is, okay? Let's see if it does what it needs to do. Then we have Tales of the Valiant. Now, Tales of the Valiant is done by Kobold Press. Now, Kobold Press is essentially trying to print themselves a version of Dungeons & Dragons 5e. It is pretty much just a slight modification of that rule system. A lot of people have been quite critical of that was a bad thing to do, that was a foolish or wasn't going to be useful in any way whatsoever, and you're wasting your time. But what that does by using, and I suspect they will not use the open game license, I suspect that they will either print it as its own thing, okay, under a different license, maybe the ORC license, or even use Creative Commons version 4, since it's under Creative Commons version 4. That sort of hardens it so that if people want to use that rule system and Wizards of the Coast ever decides to move away from that rule system, well, Kobold Press will continue to use that rule system and refine it and adjust it. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. I would expect many companies to wind up potentially republishing Dungeons & Dragons 5e with slight modifications and making that their system, okay? And this sort of hardens it so that it will survive over time, even if Wizards of the Coast decides they want to completely revamp. Now, I don't expect that to be the case. I don't think Wizards of the Coast is going to do anything like that. Then we have MCDM's Cinematic Tabletop Role-Playing Game by Matthew Colville's design team. This is an interesting game in that Matthew takes a lot of ideas from D&D 4e, and he's apparently trying to build it from the ground up with his design team. Already they've decided to get rid of the attack roll. I've said for many years that role-playing games will probably remove more dice rolls rather than add dice rolls to that game system. that as time goes by, I don't know if that'll happen in my lifetime or even your lifetime, but I suspect at some point role-playing games, tabletop role-playing games, adults will finally get over the fact that they don't have to have rules and they don't have to roll dice to actually play a tabletop role-playing game. A lot of people have a very narrow sort of bandwidth or definition, their own personal bias that is, like everybody does, of what a tabletop role-playing game is. And really, it's a nonsense, because games are games. If you look at the definition of game, it says nothing like what people often describe them as being. Really, the problem for a tabletop role-playing game has always been that adults need rules and they need dice to legitimize the fact that they are playing make-believe. Whereas kids don't worry about that sort of thing, but adults will certainly do that, okay? So that is going to be an interesting process. I actually think that this is probably something that a lot of tabletop role-playing games will do, removing the attack roll for combat. It's going to be quite a common thing. We also have Starfinder 2nd Edition by Paizo. Now, Starfinder already exists. They are doing a new version of Starfinder. Really, I think that's ultimately 2nd Edition Starfinder is to remove anything that might be attached to Wizards of the Coast's open game license. Okay, they've already gone through the process of remastering the Pathfinder rules for 2nd Edition, and the remastered rules are now out. And I think that's really what they're trying to do here. I understand that Starfinder has a possibly even a better system than Pathfinder. I don't know, because I've never actually looked at the rule system myself. But that's really a sort of a science fiction setting rather than a fantasy setting. Okay, we also have quite a kind of a surprise on the horizon, and that is Stormlight RPG. Now, Stormlight by Brotherwise is going to have no attack roll. It is based off a very popular book series or novel series. It is probably going to be very popular. I don't know that it will be competing with Dungeons and Dragons by Wizards of the Coast, but it certainly is going to take up a chunk of the market. There are a lot of games that are going to be doing that in the first place. Like there's a whole bunch of them. Everybody is doing their own thing. And a lot of people, when you see these games that I list off, they're doing their own game mechanics. They're not really duplicating what Wizards of the Coast has done with Dungeons and Dragons. They're trying to do something slightly different. And Stormlight's going to be one of those. Final Fantasy XIV is getting an RPG, a tabletop role-playing game for Final Fantasy XIV by Square Enix. Now, I don't know that much about the tabletop role-playing game, but most of you have probably played the video game for Final Fantasy. I know I have. It's a turn-based system, so I'm sure that they will port that over, and we'll see what they get. They've got plenty of people who are very capable of designing it, so great, awesome. We also have, big surprise, we have a tabletop role-playing game for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It is being released again, obviously an update or maybe even a completely different system by Palladium. Now, Palladium has done a lot of role-playing games over the years. Some of them have been good, some of them haven't been so good. Others have been very crunchy or hard to understand. Some of them have been better than others. Palladium has had a rocky road in terms of what people view as good game mechanics for a tabletop role-playing game. But it is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. A lot of people can identify that. I suspect, from what I can hear so far and see what's going on, and there's not a lot of information, that maybe they're going back towards a more adult concept of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which were pretty, originally the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were very brutal. They weren't quite as commercialized as they are now. They were definitely underground, which is not a pun. Anyway, we also have the Diablo tabletop role-playing game by Blizzard. There's another company involved helping with the design of this tabletop role-playing game. Diablo, a video game, been around a long time. They're now turning it into a tabletop role-playing game. For me, this is it's the world, and it's really just another version of Dungeons and Dragons. In terms of its game system, my understanding is they are not trying to duplicate D&D's mechanics, but we'll see. We also have Gloomhaven, the RPG, the tabletop role-playing game for Gloomhaven. And it is being put out by, now if I get this name wrong, I do apologize, Cephalophears, I think it is. I don't know very much about the Gloomhaven game. I know that it's a board game. I haven't really ever played it myself. It just strikes me as another fantasy genre game, and they're now going to make it into a full-blown tabletop role-playing game. That is also scheduled to sort of be coming out about 2024, 2025. We haven't got exact dates for these things. Obviously, they have to finish these things. We also have Assassin's Creed by Common Games. That's right, the video game Assassin's Creed. That's now going to wind up being a tabletop role-playing game with its own system, unique to its campaign world. We have, now these are a lot smaller in terms of the production teams or how the likelihood of you actually knowing about them in the first place, but they still exist out there. They're still being made, and that is DC-20 by the Dungeon Coach. Alan is making this game. He's been designing it for a while. It is his version of what he sees as I guess a fantasy-like tabletop role-playing game. He's done a few different things that are unique to it, and we'll see how he goes. I'm interested to see what his final result is. Who knows? I have no idea. I've never really been connected strongly to what Alan creates in terms of mechanical rules and so forth, but you never know. Everybody's giving it a go, and Alan Dungeon Coach is going to be making his DC-20. It is a D20 system. Okay, all right. We also have a game you may not know about, and that is called Sagas. Sagas as in S-A-G-A-S. This is being created by Dennis, the okayest DM. This is a system agnostic system game system, and if you want to play a tabletop role-playing game and you don't want to worry about mathematics, I know that he's very hot on the idea of having as little mathematics as possible. Instead, it's the dice size that determines the chance of your success. So the smaller the dice, the better. The larger the dice, the worse chance of being successful. So that's what's really going on there for him. I've already made a character for Sagas. It was actually very easy to do. I was surprised just how simple. And I haven't played the game yet, but I certainly hope to do so in 2024. We had planned to do it this year, but things happened. We also have Vagabond by Taryn, or Indostructo Boy. So Vagabond is really Taryn's view of what I guess a game system that is crunchy, because Taryn likes crunchy game mechanics. He's also trying to make a game which appeals to people in terms of customization. He's also trying to build the game so it's easy enough for a game master or dungeon master to run. I've already talked to Taryn about potentially going through and him running the game for us as part of the Game Master Roundtable. We'll see how that goes. It sounds like it's quite likely that it will happen, but Taryn's got a lot of work to do right now, so I need to leave him to it, and we'll get back to you when that happens. So that is another major game. Now this game, again, takes elements of D&D, but not completely. Yep. And then we also have, of course, the Dungeons & Dragons 5e revised 2024 rules that are going to be put out by Wizards of the Coast. This is probably I would say the biggest game out there, but it is not a new game. It is a revised game. So it's not a completely new system, whereas a lot of what I've just talked about are almost completely revised, completely new systems. I mean, Starfinder 2nd Edition is a revision, as far as I'm concerned, and so is D&D 5e. The other ones, they're really their own thing. They're the first time they've been put out. Or even Daggerheart, because it borrows so much mechanically from somewhere else, might be another example. Now, that doesn't even count all of the new tabletop role-playing games being released in 2023 that have already been released. Like we've had Shadow Dark, we've had Candelera Obscura by Tarian Press, the Critical Role team. And there are more, but this discussion needed to be more about what are we going to see in 2024. So there's a lot. That is a lot of role-playing games to release in 1 year. That is a huge number of role-playing games. So if you thought that the tabletop role-playing game community was shrinking and there were going to be less people playing tabletop role-playing games, and that most people are going to be playing D&D 5e or revised D&D 5e, I would say probably not. I would say that the community is diversifying. There are going to be so many games out there. Some of them won't be successful. Let's get real. Some of them won't succeed, but others will. Now, before I move on to my next question that I'm supposed to be answering, I see in the chat there are many people commenting, and so I'm going to deal with that. The next thing I'm going to talk about is third-party publishers in 2024. But before I do that, let's go through the chat. Okay, all right. So what have we got here? Starting at the top. Oh, you have a question here, Pale Rider. So I said hashtag question at the top. If you have a question that I don't answer or you want me to talk about, you need to specify. So question, why is your hat still on? I know it's hot in there. It is very hot. My hat is still on. I will take my hat off. I don't know that you're going to like it. I don't know that I'm going to like it. It's pretty rough. It's pretty rough. And it is hot. I'll take the hat off. Thank you very much, Pale Rider. You were thinking about me. Okay. All right. Now, Pale Rider, hello, how are you? What do you got? Kobold Press usually puts out good stuff. I might check that out. Yes, I would say that's true. I have found that Kobold Press, in the last couple of years, the quality of their products has diminished. I would say they have diminished. I hate to say it. I don't want to say it, but I think it has, ultimately. I think some of the products they put out initially were very, very good, and they have kind of gone downhill a little bit. Not everything, but some of it, particularly around their adventures. They're short sort of anthologies. They haven't got better. They've kind of got worse. Removing the dice rolls equals if you can't lose, you don't need a dice. No, it doesn't. That's just your perspective, Fred. Hello, Fred Huber. How are you doing? Overboard. Hello, Overboard. Hi, Joe. Joe is a moderator. Thank you for being here. Shy X. Is that Shy X? Hopefully I got your name right. Shy X. I'm excited for Final Fantasy 14. Well, cool, because it's coming out. It's coming out next year. Final Fantasy, the tabletop role-playing game. Hello, Chris. How are you doing? I think Kobold Press wrote the original Rise of Tiamat adventure for 5e when it came out, if I remember correctly. That's right. The Tyranny of Dragons storyline was written by Kobold Press. A lot of it was cut out, and they did Horde of the Dragon Queen, the Rise of Tiamat. They then combine those two books into one book and just called it the Tyranny of Dragons storyline. Yeah. So yes, they did. They made that one. Well, yes. Well, final. It's really never final. It's final for somebody, but not for everybody. Yep. So, well, for me, when I look, the original Final Fantasy video game was turn-based. It was turn-based. It was a turn-based game, as far as I remember, very early on. This is going back to the very first game, and I was alive for that. So, yeah. I'm just saying it's turn-based based on what I saw, and that's when it first came out. Hello, Ugly Weirdo. How are you? You haven't played Final Fantasy 14 for a few years? I don't know what. I'm not sure why they decided it would be called Final Fantasy 14, but they have. They have a 5e version of Diablo 2, I think. Chris, I'm very interested. I'm doing a lot of fan-made stuff on my channel that converts 5e and other D&D versions. So I like that idea. If I can find it, I will. I will have to check it out. There was a beta test of the original. Oh, okay, I see. Hello, Awareness, how are you? You can't find anybody to play 5e? Well, maybe you can find somebody to play something else. You have Tanaris, the board game, coming. What is this? So, Chris, Dragon Prince RPG. Now, I haven't heard of Dragon Prince RPG. Maybe I need to make a note of that somewhere. Dragon Prince RPG. I don't have a piece of paper. Okay, well, I didn't see anything on it, so I didn't mention it. But if it's actually coming out in 2024, great. Awesome. What do you got here, Joe? I also plan on playing a campaign made by Beasterium Miniatures that make 3D files. Of course, you're printing miniatures. I should have guessed for your 5e. Of course. I don't know that there is a Star Trek tabletop role-playing game coming out in 2024. So, I have no idea. I don't think so. Oh, I'm sure it would be fun. Snakes and okay people are just mean. I'm actually not Ted, but if you think I'm Ted, that's cool. My name is Fred. How are you doing? Nice to have you. Changing laptops. Good for you. You change your laptop and I'll keep going. Hello, Shiner81. Stargate. Yes, there is a Stargate tabletop role-playing game, but that was released a while back. Yep. Hello, Prepare, Cook and Survive. How you doing, Stuart? And yes, Happy New Year to you. Okay, let's move on to the next question. We have spent enough time on that question. The next question, and that is this one here. It's around third-party publishing. Third-party publishing. All right, there. So the question being, what third-party publishers, or will third-party publishers expand in the coming year of 2024? And it's a really good question. Most of you, I would hope, probably already know the answer. Have you guessed? The answer is yes. Third-party publication will definitely expand in 2024. Everybody is now publishing. It's just the new thing to do. Rather than anything else, publishing is a big thing for everybody, because you don't necessarily have to spend as much money as you had to in the past. You can just release a digital PDF if you want to. So yes, and in fact, third-party publishers have already expanded in 2023 after Wizards of the Coast attempted to gain a monopoly over the tabletop role-playing game industry with their attempted illegal open game license restrictions and changes, and revoking the open game license, which if it had gone to court they would have lost, more than likely. But that's beside the point. That's not the factor. But the reality is third-party publishing is a big, big part of our world now. Now, the general public, I would imagine you're going to see less official Dungeons & Dragons products on social media. And this is because the people who influence the community, the influential people are still quite annoyed by Wizards of the Coast. Not everybody is still annoyed by Wizards of the Coast or Hasbro and their actions in 2023. But there are still plenty of people who are influential in the tabletop community who still view them as a threat, which is why they're making their own tabletop games, why they're making their own products, and they will continue to do so. So social media influencers will probably widen, and they have already started that process, widen the range of role-playing games that they discuss, put into videos, do articles on, make blogs or vlogs on. All of that social media influence is going to steer more away, I would say, from the current version of D&D 5e. There'll be some people who will narrow in on it because they will be desperate to get video views on YouTube, and that may, in some degree, be successful for them. But ultimately, everybody knows that they need to do their own thing now. And so social media is now really social publication. That's what everybody's kind of working towards. Modern Dungeons & Dragons is not always going to wind up being the preferred game for players or game masters. There are going to be things that are going to work better for other people for a variety of different reasons. This is look, let's get real. If you're in North America, you can probably access any tabletop role-playing game you want. But if you're in a different country outside of North America, it is much harder to get these third-party publishers content. It's harder to, even if you do it online, it's not like everything can be shipped to any country easily or even at a reasonable price. So there is going to be some problems along the way. Many companies are, like I said, they're actually making their own tabletop role-playing game. They're making their own role-playing game products, and they're going to continue that trend. I don't think that that's going to stop. Okay. I've already noticed that a lot of people are actually, those people playing Dungeons and Dragons 5e, some of them have moved away and are playing different games from publishers other than Wizards of the Coast, from the discussions I've had. But there's still plenty of people still playing Dungeons and Dragons 5e, still people playing Dungeons and Dragons 4e, 3.5. There's been a bit of a resurgence in D&D 4e, even 3.5. Certainly been a huge resurgence, I would say, in BECMI, Basic Dungeons and Dragons, and maybe a slight increase in AD&D. But old school essentials, or the old school Renaissance, the clones of D&D, they've certainly picked up as well. So we're going to see a lot more of that in the coming year. There's actually so many new Dungeons and Dragons role-playing game clones that people can select from now, and there's so many that are being made that you're kind of spoiled for choice. And unfortunately, in many respects, many of these clones of Dungeons and Dragons 5e or D&D, full stop, are actually better for some people, or even simpler and much more user-friendly. So they're going to onboard people better than D&D 5e can. It's an interesting process. I'm quite surprised by that. This also means with the sort of I would say definitely a bit of an explosion in third-party publication, we're going to see a more advanced or an advancement in game mechanics for tabletop role-playing games. Now, what that means is not more complexity. I think that means more streamlining to make things as easy to do as possible. I'm sure there are going to be games that are going to go for crunch, but I think we're looking at the idea that elegance and simplicity are important to playing a game. That sitting down and having to read a book that has pages and pages of rules to understand is not a good approach. Yeah. Now, I also, because I do mix with some of the other tabletop and D&D YouTubers that are in the space, many of the tabletop role-playing game YouTuber creators, whether you know them or you don't know them, they're turning more towards book and PDF publication, product manufacture, rather than making videos. So video production as a major source of revenue is actually falling down the scale. And at the top of the scale is now the publication of physical books, the production of PDFs, and the creation of physical products, whether that's dice, miniatures, all sorts of different things, battle mats, things like that. Video production is going to be really just for a very small portion of the community. And even the big YouTube channels are going to shift a lot of their hard work towards publication rather than video production. So you might even see a slight diminishment in the number of videos that they release. I think that's pretty likely. I think you can just about count on that one. Okay, let's have a look at the chat before I move on to our next question. You meant Fred? You meant Freed. You got it. It's Freed. Not a problem. It has been a while. It has been a long time. Yeah, there will always be third-party publishers. Even an attempt to sort of monopolize the industry was never really going to succeed anyway, even if they were trying to do that. One of the problems that third-party publishers were striking with the OGL debacle at the beginning of the year is that people who weren't using any of the rules from any of the versions of D&D, whether it was 3.5 or 5e, were still publishing using the Open Game license. And of course, if you void that license, which you're not actually able to do, that because they were using that structure, that piece of work, rather than getting a lawyer to do it for them, they were using that to protect their game. And it wasn't so much protecting their game in the sense of we don't want people to make a product for it and make money off it. It was, how do we put it out there and say to people, we want you to make something else for this to go with our game so it becomes more popular. It was an easy way. The OGL was an easy way. You know, even Fate and Fudge, which has nothing to do with D&D. There's nothing. But they still had the OGL on the back of the rules. And that's sort of changed now. Here we go. They will always gravitate towards the popular system. Yes, to a certain degree, that's always going to tend to happen. It always comes down to who can distribute their product more efficiently and effectively, and the bigger companies usually can do that. Overboard, what do you got here? I still have a copy of the Cubicle 7 Broken Weave coming for you. Oh, really? Is this 7 Broken Weave coming to me hopefully in the future? I don't know when that is. It hasn't arrived yet. No, it hasn't arrived yet. They basically use 5e with their own twists. I will get your address when it arrives. That's fine, Joe. Sounds good to me. So a lot of people to this year, a lot of people sent me books to review, to talk about, and I have done so. The only thing I haven't talked about a lot has been Pathfinder. We did some character creation for Pathfinder 2nd edition, but I didn't actually go over the rules. One, sheer panic and fear set in when I started looking at that. Okay, I can just say my guts just fell out when I started looking at how to deal with that. I just didn't know what to do, so I actually didn't approach it. I will deal with it next year, though. I will deal with it next year. Pathfinder 2nd edition and the Game Mastery Guide. I will talk about that. All right. What else? Pale Rider, you have a question. What RPG are you looking forward to playing in the new year? Actually, I would say Dungeon Crawl Classics. This is actually kind of answering a question I've already got on my list. Dungeon Crawl Classics, I'm looking forward to playing that. I'm looking forward to playing Sagas. I actually want to play Sagas. And the other game I'm interested in playing, I mean, I would say legitimately interested in playing again, is, and it's not a new game, it's Back Me Dungeons and Dragons. It's Back Me Basic D&D. I've had such a ball playing that system. I now know for sure after playing it, after reading the book, after playing the game, I know that basic Back Me Dungeons and Dragons is far simpler, just not intuitive. Far simpler than 5e. It's a far easier system to play. But it is not intuitive, so it can get confusing. And I think Shadow Dark RPG has done a great job of trying to solve a lot of that problem that existed between the transfer from 5e to basic Back Me D&D. They've done a great, I mean, Kelsey's done a wonderful job with it. So I've kind of answered that question. Those are the games I'm really interested in. And I would also say Mazes and Monsters. I'm still going to work on Mazes and Monsters, but it's definitely not going to get released in 2024. And I'm still wanting to sort of let it percolate a bit longer. Hello, Derp. Derp is a patron. Thank you for being here. What have you got here? I'm looking forward to running a couple of games. Paranoia in February. I've played it once, but I haven't ran it yet. Okay. I've heard of Paranoia. I've never played the game myself. Everyone needs to get one of AJ's battle maps for their late night pizza needs. Exactly. Yeah. It's great for pizza, and it's also great for actually playing a tabletop role-playing game if you're using a grid. Absolutely, I agree. It very much is. Shiner81, I'm looking forward to getting into the Pathfinder Remastered, but my current group is still playing all of the third-party 5e stuff we have, which is probably going to kind of continue. I will still keep doing, so for those of you who are wondering, will I keep doing the free fan-made stuff where people have taken 5e, converted it for a particular setting? Yes, I'll still do that. There's still quite a few left to get through. but that'll be next year. Yep. Okay, so that's that question answered. I need a drink of water, and we'll deal with the next question. Will I be playing different now? This is where I kind of already answered this question sort of already, but let's drop this into the chat so that you know what I'm discussing next. This is it here. Will I be playing different tabletop role-playing game systems in 2024? And the answer is yes. Yes, of course I have. Well, yeah, I will do that. It's been a good time. The channel is now called How to RPG, not How to D&D. We don't just play Dungeons and Dragons here now. And it's been eye-opening. I have played other games other than D&D in the past, but I've had a great time doing that. I've already started that process in 2023, you know. The Game Master Roundtable is now really hosting different types of role-playing games. A wide range of tabletop role-playing games. We're doing lots of different things there. And we're going to actually probably broaden it out even wider. So I know that I have discussions with Wally DM about every 2 weeks to a month. And we've talked about the Cypher system. So we've definitely talked about getting somebody on to run the Cypher system for us. Pardon me, I've got gas. So the Cypher system is definitely on our cards. It's just about getting the right person to run that for us. And then I don't think we're going to have problems getting people to play the game at all. I've almost found every time we've put forward a new game to play as part of the Game Master Roundtable, there's been just a barrage of people who wanted to play a different game other than D&D. Okay, or a different version of Dungeons and Dragons. It has been very easy to find players in the YouTube community. People have been very open to the idea. So the Cypher system is there. Dungeon Crawl Classics came up. Wally is wanting to look into playing Dungeon Crawl Classics, so I believe we'll wind up doing that. We were talking to Jordan, the PH is silent about that, but it's kind of gone dark or quiet on that front. So I think that means that Jordan's not going to be available for that. He was going to run it. But yeah, at this present time, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. But we'll find somebody else to run Dungeon Crawl Classics for us. We're also going to play Terran's Vagabond. I've discussed this briefly. I think we did it over text, and then we had discussion in person all over a video chat about playing Terran's new Vagabond game. So that's probably going to happen. Advanced Dungeons & Dragons has come up, but we haven't gone very far with that. Yeah. It may happen, it may not. We'll see how we go. But it certainly has been discussed. A new superhero RPG. Now, AJ Pickett is currently creating a new superhero role-playing game, tabletop role-playing game. He's not ready to put it forward. He hasn't finished doing his testing. When he is ready, he will present it to us and hopefully run us through a superhero-based tabletop role-playing game. We'll do that as part of the Game Master Roundtable. So I'm looking forward to that happening. I'm, again, looking forward to playing Dennis's or the OKSDM's Sagas game, the system agnostic game. We were going to play Spaceballs, and I still think their plan is to continue to do that just in 2024. And there are more that we have discussed, but those are the ones that sort of have definitely gone on the radar. Cypher System, Dungeon Crawl Classics, Vagabond, a new superhero RPG by AJ Pickett, Sagas, and there was a discussion around AD&D. We actually talked about Pathfinder 2nd Edition. I have to say I wasn't keen. I'd prefer to just go back to playing 3.5 D&D, frankly. But that's just my perspective. I don't know if that's going to translate into what we wind up doing. We will also continue to play a couple of other games, more than likely in 2024. Games like Morkborg. We've already played Morkborg and Pirateborg. We might wind up playing Cyberborg or something else, or some other version. Or just Morkborg full stop. I know that there's people who want to continue to play that game, even though it seems deep, dark, and dank, and very brutal. I think that appeals to a lot of us. Shadow Dark RPG, certainly there's been discussions. I know that Wally DM is going to be going and hopefully meeting Kelsey next year at one of the cons, and he's getting hold of the Shadow Dark RPG book himself. We have already played one game with Tabletop Bob, and I think we would like to do it again. BECME Basic D&D, hosted by possibly Mr. Welsh, if he's ever available again. I know he's gotten busy. If Glenn is able to do it, Mr. Welsh might be able to run us some basic D&D. But otherwise, Wally DM will be running us through some more BECME basic Dungeons & Dragons. There's also been discussions about running some Dungeons & Dragons 5e games. We haven't done it because so many of us are already playing that game. And it's been nice to be able to sort of allocate games that aren't stuff that we're already playing. And so D&D 5e hasn't really gone onto the radar that much, but we haven't written it off at all. And then there's also the game that I'm probably going to wind up starting to play near the end of the year, is my own version of D&D, which is very stripped down. Like you might even be able to call it a different game. It might, because it does seem very different in many respects. It's very simplified. Okay, it's simple at the core rules, but not necessarily simple and dumbed down. I wouldn't consider it dumbed down. I consider it sensible. Anyway, we also have like many large and small YouTubers will be trying out old tabletop role-playing games and new tabletop role-playing games. So you need to keep a lookout on YouTube, because there are going to be a lot of people doing a lot of different things moving forward. It's not just the Game Master Roundtable. Everybody is getting involved. Even the much larger tabletop role-playing game YouTubers or D&D YouTubers. They're all playing not just one game. They're trying out other stuff, okay? And that will definitely continue. Okay. Yay, Mork Bork and Shadow Dark. Yes, that's right. We will see more of that in the future for sure. I have more to say about that, but let's answer the next question that I have on my list. So let's roll on down to question number 4. And this is around physical books. There's been a lot of discussions about the fact that, in this new age of digital product, that the concept of having a physical book is dead. Like, physical books don't sell well, Physical books don't really get put into bookstores that much. The problem with selling books or physical books is if the publisher can't sell it through the vendor can return the book. And that means that the publisher then has to return the money to the vendor who is trying to sell the book. This is the problem with physical books. So the discussion is always, we've seen more and more people saying, because physical books for Dungeons and Dragons or other tabletop role-playing games are expensive and it's old technology, that we can probably see people stopping the publication in the coming years. I wouldn't say that's going to happen in 2024, but coming years that we're going to see people stopping the production of books. And I would say you really haven't been paying attention. You'd have to be in a very small world to understand that as your what's moving forward. And there's a couple of reasons why I would say that physical books are not disappearing. I would say a big no. Physical books will not disappear. They're not going to get stopped. They're not going to stop publishing physical books. Even if they're not making that much money off them, they're still going to keep doing it. It's very, very unlikely, even with new technology. So, books for everything. Absolutely everything. When you think about books and information and knowledge, people have been making books for thousands of years, hundreds, thousands of years. And these books have survived natural disasters. They've been reprinted, rewritten. They've survived wars. They've survived all sorts of things. The creation of book, whether it's on page, piece of paper, or on tablet, or on scroll, has been fundamental to our whole civilization and the civilizations before us. So you cannot just stop thinking you have a new medium, this old medium means nothing. And there's a couple of reasons why. Digital books or PDF, these things can be removed from the customer access. Now, if you're as a customer, as a person who wants something, whether it's a digital book or a PDF, and it's for D&D or it's for a tabletop role-playing game, a company who changes their policy or becomes bankrupt, you can actually lose access to those products. So it doesn't harden them against time. Okay, that's one of the big things that is a problem. One of the things that Wizards of the Coast did a few years back is they had a whole lot of books in a warehouse, old products that they decided to scan because there were so few of them available now in physical form, scan them and turn them into digital PDFs. And they're now available. You can buy these things, right? Whereas before you had to find a pirated version or you needed to spend, a lot of money to buy the physical copy. So in some respects, digital books, or the PDF, should I say, has protected some of the physical stuff. But it goes the other way as well, because companies can wind up losing stuff. Now, something like computer software or a PDF, they're vulnerable to being lost when they're housed by a limited number of companies, particularly when those companies are restrictive in how you can access that software or those PDFs. It is quite common for something that houses something, whether it's a PDF or it's information, for those sites to either wind up with their servers going down and the information being lost completely, for it to be corrupted, or for the whole site to become no longer financially viable and it gets taken down, or left to just run until it degrades. Okay, so there's another problem too, and that is copyright. Something that is copyright means that it belongs to somebody else. And when it's copyright and it's not part of the common collective, that can be restricted. And when you restrict something, all it takes is some disaster to eliminate it. One of the great things about books and how they have survived over the years is when anything has been openly allowed to be accessed so that it can be copied and then reproduced again and again and again, those are the books and the information that survived. The things that have been restricted have been had barriers around them because of copyright. The things that have been limited by the number of companies that hold them, those are the things that risk being lost forever. So this is not something you want to do. Okay, I suppose it's possible you could say yes, they can still do it, Fred. I suppose they can, but I don't think that's likely. I think it's much more likely we will still see physical books for many years to come. Now, the other thing to consider is that something like digital data loss is just like one large solar flare ejection away. Now, you probably know what the sun is, and a solar flare, you know what a solar flare is. It's a big outburst of gas and energy. And if you get an ejection that throws enough energy towards the Earth, it can knock out and damage computer storage devices. We are well and truly overdue for another one. So it is very possible, in the coming years, we might have a major problem with a lot of data loss that can't be fixed. One, because everything was stored on servers or on digital files, and it's gone, like it just disappeared. So I think that's again another reason why we're not going to see physical books disappear completely. It's another way of hardening it. The more different ways you can actually put information down and it be stored in different ways, the better chance it has of surviving. Okay. Now every publisher is still printing books. I would like to point out that every third-party publisher for tabletop role-playing games, everybody who's making stuff, they're still printing books. Even if Wizards of the Coast suddenly announced in 2024, which they're not announcing this, but even if they did, everybody else is still printing books. They're still printing books on paper, even though printing costs and paper has increased in their price. People are still printing books, and of a higher quality in many cases than most people could possibly imagine. Like, they're not printing them as poor products. They are well bound, they're on good paper, they've got hard covers. Like, people are doing a really good job of printing books, and they continue to do so. Yep. But they're also providing digital versions of this as well. Now, somebody would say, yes, but Fred, the price of products like books are increasing. The page is getting more expensive, the text is getting more expensive, the labor to make the book is getting more expensive. But you've got to understand that paper and products and the people who make these things was always going to increase in price anyway. That's why we have inflation. There's a thing called inflation, as you know, and wages will increase, salaries will increase to compensate for that. And if they don't compensate for that, then those people who are trying to make money won't make as much money as they did before. It's not the end of the world, okay? They just need to make enough money to stay viable, really, and they'll get through whatever problem there is. And at some point, everything sort of eventually finds its own equilibrium to a certain degree. So if the price of a product goes up, and everything has been going up, not just paper and books and stuff like that, so will everything else, which means that salaries and wages have to go up. So I would not consider that a good argument for the fact that, physical books are definitely going the way of the dodo. I think that's completely nonsense. You haven't really paid attention to history. You've honed in on one point, and you've made a whole lot of assumptions that are actually false. Okay, all right. I need some water, and I also need to have a look at the chat before I move on to my next question. I have already allocated as much time as it needs to get through all of my questions. I know I have a lot of questions here. All right, let's get rid of that one. Okay, so Fred, what do you got here? Yes, and that's another thing. A lot of people prefer paper over digital products. For me, it's very difficult for my eyes to actually look at a digital image. It is much easier for me to look at a written page. It is much easier for me to look at big print rather than small print. These are all things that, and also too, when I'm reading, I like to read outside under a tree at the beach or at the park. I don't really want to read in my office at a desk, or off my phone where the print is small, or on a tablet where I've got to deal with eye strain. As you get older, your eyes get more worn out, and so things that are digital cause more problems. Now, you can get PDF readers, but I don't have one, and again, they run out of power. I still prefer paper, and there's a lot of people who prefer paper. What do you got here, Pale Rider? I need a physical book. You appreciate PDFs, but the format for printing, yeah. For me, it is also one of the reasons why I prefer books too. As you get older, it becomes more and more important to have that. I can't count the number of things that I've lost. I've lost so many books, but I've lost so many PDFs over the years as well, to data corruption and all sorts of things. Yeah, and you can, and look, whether it's somebody else is printing it, you're likely to take your PDF and print it and put it in a physical binder anyway. Fred, you're absolutely right. What do you got here? Prepare, cook, and survive. I'm old school. Need a physical book this year. Mork bork forbidden. Okay, all right. Cool. All right. So I think most of us are in agreement that it's going to be physical books continuing, but with the option for PDFs. Now, smart companies will bundle these things. You get the physical book and you get the PDF. That would be the smart way to go. I know they're trying to have pricing systems that separate this sort of thing, but I don't think that's the smartest way to approach things. Okay, I need to drink some more water, and we need to move on to our next question. Now, this is quite an interesting question. It has caused a lot of controversy. Hello, Chris. How are you doing? I want physical books so I can still play. If you survive the apocalypse, you can still play, right? All the data loss, you can still play your game. Exactly. You're going to need something to do, won't you? Or will you be hunting for food and growing vegetables? Who knows? Anyway, next question. What will happen with artificial intelligence being used in the tabletop game industry? With products like artificial intelligence, whether it's for art or for literature, is now a very common thing. It is there. It exists. There's been lots of discussions around it. There's a few things that I have to say about artificial intelligence, and none of them I would say are dramatic. I think that a sensible, like normal person should come to this conclusion. It's pretty obvious. Okay, whether it is art, literature, it doesn't matter. Government law is required to ensure that copyright art and written literature is not going to be copied in some way by artificial intelligence so that it can be sold as original material or original work. Now, where the government has not put in legislation, whatever country you're in, there needs to be something to ensure that you can't simply take copyright artwork, copyright literature, and plagiarize and feed that into an artificial intelligence network that then spits out really a hashing of that in some way. Now, in many respects, that is what everybody does. So artificial intelligence is already doing that which a normal person would do. Normal people do that. They take an idea they've seen visually from one person or another thing, or from nature, they combine it and they come up with something new. Okay? But there are certain things around copyright. Not everything can be copyrighted. That's the important thing to make the distinction about. You know, you can't copyright the concept of a dragon and what a dragon looks like. You may be able to copyright a specific rendition of a dragon that you have drawn, but you can't copyright the concept of a dragon and the general appearance of a dragon. Now, that whether that's artificial intelligence or that is just Joe Blow or Mary Sue down the road, it doesn't matter, okay? The same thing applies to plagiarism. If you take enough written material from somebody else's work and you put it to create a new piece of work, a new piece of art, and you've taken too much from somebody else, you're just going to wind up in court. And it doesn't matter whether it's done with artificial intelligence or somebody using that artificial intelligence, you're going to wind up in court. So the government at some point will have to put in some guidelines and some criteria for dealing with this. I think the easiest way to approach artificial intelligence is those people making artificial intelligence that can actually steal copyright material or be trained on copyright material or is being used by somebody else, even if they didn't create the artificial intelligence, for publication. Those are the people that really need to be tackled. Yep. The most important problem to stop with artificial intelligence is it being trained on another person's copyrighted work. That is our biggest problem with artificial intelligence right now. Because if somebody else can take somebody else's copyrighted work, use artificial intelligence, and then republish it, that is going to be an issue. And we should be stopping that for sure. Now, the world is far from finding a solution to artificial intelligence stealing an artist's work, whether that be a writer, okay, whether that be a designer, and somebody who draws or paints. The world is far from solving that problem. We're going to have a few more years. In 2024, maybe they'll come up with a solution. I don't think it'll happen in 2024. I know my brother was saying that they should have solved most of these problems in the next couple of months, but I don't think that they're going to move this quickly. I don't think they quite understand what they need to do with this, okay? Because the problem lies with two factors. People using artificial intelligence, okay, to create new publications from copyright work, and people creating artificial intelligence that will allow you to do that. Both these individuals or groups of individuals are really the problem right now. Now, that being said, that is around publishing something, okay? That's a very different kettle of fish to what a lot of people are using artificial intelligence for. I would expect in the more years that there'll be more discussion, more arguments about artificial intelligence, art and literature. But really, publishers are legally and morally correct. Like if you see publishers saying we will not accept and we will ban the use of artificial intelligence, which scrapes the internet for copyright artwork, duplicating aspects of somebody else's art, or training the AI, or taking concepts and plagiarizing from literature. Yeah, publishers are doing the right thing. I think that's a good thing. I would expect to start seeing companies with large copyright archives like Google Images and things like that, where they actually take a photo or they have an artist, they pay somebody who creates a piece of art or an image, and it now belongs to Google or a company, a large company. I can imagine them taking their archives where all the images they own, they feed that into an artificial intelligence as a resource to train it. And that would really be the only legal way to allow artificial intelligence to create new pieces of art, whether that be literature or physical or images. I think that's probably where we're heading. The problem, I think, lies more in the literature side than in the physical representation side of things. Now, the other aspect of artificial intelligence that is very interesting, and that is people using artificial intelligence for their own creation, not for publication, but just making stuff for their tabletop role-playing game. Whatever game you're playing, whether you're creating adventures using it, whether you're making monsters, NPCs, magic items, maps, art for your games that is only used by you and your group, I think that's going to become more and more a tool that people will use. Now, because that does exist, and because it's not, I wouldn't say it's perfect. I wouldn't say it's that great. I wouldn't say that it's polished. But I think that is going to mean that a lot of people won't need people to publish stuff for them. I think you'll find that the community who are playing D&D and other tabletop role-playing games are going to utilize artificial intelligence to simply create homebrew stuff. They won't need to go and pay for somebody else to go and get their stuff. They'll just create it themselves. Now, whether it's any good or whether they need to adjust it, it's another story. I would suggest that it's probably going to require some refinement on their part. And if they have the time to do that, great. I think that's where the use of artificial intelligence really shines, is not in publication, official publication with copyright. I think it shines where just the average person can take it, use it to create their own stuff, speed up the process of home brewing, basically. I think that is the greatest value in it. Okay, let's go to this chat and see what we have. Hello, Phil. How are you doing? All right, next. AI will always only be able to rule based on the way the AI is written. No, I think AI will eventually get to a point where it's capable of doing anything that a human can. But how long that will take, I don't know. I think it is entirely possible. Remember, science fiction is just science fact coming later on. It's one of the things you kind of discover as you get older, is science fiction is just science fact later on. What do you got here? Prepare, cook, and survive. As long as it remains free or affordable, I can also be a useful tool. Yes, that's right. A lot of the AI tools that you're getting aren't very good. Most of them are actually you have to pay for, like whether it's imaging or literature. The good stuff you have to pay for. We'll have to wait and see. Yes. Yeah, I would say for some people it isn't good enough. I think there'll be quite a few people out there who've been doing this for a while where AI is simply not superior to what they could come up with themselves. But if you are new, it's certainly, or intermediate in terms of skill, I can see there being some value. Maybe at least as a starting point. AI will cost some writers and artists some jobs. Yes, absolutely. I think that's very likely. But editors will be needed. Well, this is the problem, is editing has become more and more of a problematic with publication, hasn't it? As more and more errors have crept in. But that's been happening even without the use of AI. And a lawyer got in trouble for submitting an AI-generated document that listed fictitious cases as references. AI is only as intelligent as the user, sometimes not very smart. Well, that's an interesting story. I didn't realize that that had happened. Amusing. I don't know why they would try to do that. That seems kind of ridiculous. I do think the product should have be labeled as AI created and priced to reflect. Well, here's the thing. If you're producing AI art and the AI is doing most of the work and you're selling it, then why would you need to buy it? Because you could probably just use AI yourself to create it yourself. There really isn't any point. One of the things I've found when I have looked at AI creation is there's so many things that need to be refined and adjusted. It's not just a slight touch up. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. I've seen some really good stuff as well in the imaging side of things. I have not seen very good products in the literature side of things. Literature-wise, language-wise, AI is just not there. Yeah. What do you got here, Chris? I think AI tools are here to stay. Yes, they're not going anywhere. I just want to protect artists from having their work stolen. Yes, and that will happen. I guarantee. Aces and eights, Fred. Yes, exactly. Look, it doesn't matter whether you're stealing stuff using AI or whether you're stealing stuff, from somebody who's got copyright stuff. Stealing is stealing. That's it. You can hide behind AI and say, no, it was me. It wasn't me that stole it. It was the AI that stole it. It's not gonna pan out well in court. It's just not gonna work. For the people just putting adventures and core rules out there for free, I think AI is great. Yeah, if you're just doing free stuff and there's nothing else to it, it's really just a hobby fan creation. I wouldn't really worry about it. Would say it depends on the sci-fi. I suppose you could say that too. Yes, that's true. Anyway, could be a cool experiment to ask AI to write a fantasy die-hard adventure. Pale Rider? Yeah, I could do that. We put together our own ideas recently, didn't we? As a group, we did that yesterday. So yeah, I could see what I tell you right now, it isn't going to be very good. I think you'll find even the notes that I took down yesterday that the chat put forward is going to be far superior. Okay, I think that's a guaranteed. Next, let us deal with our next question. We've talked about AI. Let's deal with the next thing, and that is what changes are happening in the tabletop role-playing game community and for YouTube content creators or YouTube in general. I usually discuss this because it is something that is becoming more and more important as we move forward. So I think it is something I need to go back to. I've said it before. This is probably one time when I talk about this that people are going to get upset and angry with me. Please bear with me. This is my opinion. You do not need to share my opinion. We can have a different opinion. But what changes are happening in the tabletop role-playing game community or the D&D community or on YouTube or anything like that, it is very important to understand that there is a dynamic that is occurring. Now, in the past, and I would say we're going back a few years, the internet was a very new thing. And there was always something that wasn't good about the community online. But that is becoming more of an issue, okay? And it is growing, unfortunately. So there's a couple of consequences for this. Now, let me explain what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the community, and I don't mean necessarily you. When I say the community or the community on the internet, okay, I mean Dungeons and Dragons, I mean other role-playing games. It is not specifically targeting you in terms of a comment that I'm about to say, but continuing or increasing shameful attacks on other people in comment sections, whether that be for articles, videos, blogs, or anything else on platforms, forums, whatever, okay? Attacking other people and attacking or shaming or humiliating other people, being just really not showing proper manners and proper conduct towards other tabletop role-playing game creators, YouTube creators, publishers breaching codes of conduct that are on those platforms. This is increasing, and it is continuing. I've noticed it got worse over 2023. I was already concerned back in 2022. It got worse, and it's got so bad that we have Joe Cat, who is a YouTuber. He's now gone from the platform. Indefinitely gone. He may come back, he may not. I suspect that Joe Cat will not come back. Now, Joe Cat has got quite a large following, but this has happened to quite a few people who have been scared away from social media, from our community. As the community grows, we will attract people who are nice to be around with and other people who are not so nice. But the problem with social media, the problem with the internet, is it's very easy for people to say things that they have not the balls to say to somebody when they're face to face. Because if they did that, they'd get punched in the face and there'd be a big scrap, or that person would retaliate verbally as well. Okay? And this is a telling problem. It has always been the nature that people use the internet as a screen to get away with things they cannot get away with in person. And it's not a good thing. And I'm not happy about it. I have experienced quite a lot of hate on YouTube in the past. I would have to say right now I'm experiencing far less than I have. 2023 has been better. And I would say 2024 I expect to be better for me than it has been in the past. I've experienced less problems on YouTube and my channel by increasing the strictness of the comments section. So if people want to make a comment, I have not allowed everything to go through. I have blocked some words. I've blocked a lot of words. I've also restricted the band so that a lot more things get captured, so I can then vet them to see if they're appropriate to go up onto the comment section. So I've increased the strictness. Now, not all YouTubers have done this. Some have been reluctant to do that because they fear that this will affect the machine learning of YouTube and the chance of them being spotted by other people and watched. And so this is why you'll find many YouTubers, it's not just because they have hundreds of comments on there that they don't comment. It's because they don't want to really go through the comment section because it's so unpleasant. Okay? So that's a bad thing. I've seen that happen to a lot of other channels a lot more. The smaller you are, the less it happens. The bigger you get, the more it happens. And yeah, that seems to be the nature. But for me, it's actually gotten less. But I imagine that Joe Cat has not been quite strict on what comments can be put through, and it does affect you as a creator. Whether you're a publisher or create videos or whatever, it does affect you. So there's another thing that is starting to sort of seep in a lot more. I knew it was coming, but it's definitely exploded over 2023. And that is tabloid-style videos. We're going to see more of this. Tabloid-style videos, tabloid-style articles on YouTube and social media are becoming the norm. They are much more prevalent. They are king, unfortunately, which means that they are seen by far more people, that far more of the audience is more interested in the dramas and the tabloid style article and video than a lot of the other content or the other material that is being produced, whether that's been articles, information, or videos. And those of you who are making that sort of thing, whether it's an article written or it's video content, you guys know who they are, okay? I'm not going to name them. That's not what I'm here for. But what I will say is we're going to see more of this occurring. The quality of information is actually dropping in terms of what is useful to people, whether that's in article form or whether that is actually in video form. But the production value has been increasing. It's been the focus, and this is because of audience expectation. Audience expectation expects high quality sound, a lot of editing, changing images, constantly shifting, the expectation that the actual video quality will be of a reasonably high standard. I mean, I'm live streaming in 4K, people, okay? That's not part of that, but That sort of aspect of YouTube and even articles is going up, but the actual information is going down. Now, it's not completely the fault of YouTube creators or bloggers or reporters providing the information, particularly on Wizards of the Coast disasters. It's not necessarily just their fault. Whether those Wizards of the Coast disasters or RPG disasters or stories are true or false or dramatic, it's not necessarily just their fault. I'm going to say it right now. The audience is also at fault. If audiences have a high interest in reading, listening, and watching tabletop role-playing game dramas, disasters, and news, okay, this will determine what people make. If that is what you push more views towards and you contribute towards it, then more people will watch that, okay? And if you do that, then what happens is your creators will watch this and say, okay, I'm going to make more articles, write more articles on those sorts of things, tabloid dramas and disasters. I'm going to record more audio, more video on those topics. And you'll get less of the useful stuff. So you as an audience need to be very careful, because if the majority of the audience aren't careful in their viewing and reading habits, the only thing that you're going to see in the tabletop role-playing game community, whether that's social media, article or video, are going to be dramas and tabloid-style stories. Because why would they get made? It's shifting the focus. Why would you shift the focus? Well, creators have got to stay financially viable. And if you're pushing all of your interest there, and that's where they can collect their AdSense revenue from, or their advertising from, or their sponsorship from, that's the sort of thing they will make. Not every creator will do this, but the big creators will wind up being the tabloid style channels and websites and articles, okay, and blogs. So if the tabletop role-playing game community continues to increase their immature commentary, their hostile commentary, their focusing on dramas and disasters and social media, whatever it is, you're going to scare a lot of people away from the hobby. A lot of people are going to leave it. But not just people playing the hobby, but YouTubers, creators, and publishers will also leave. They will not be interested. They will leave. They will go. And that is unfortunately what I suspect may well happen. I've already seen an explosion in YouTube, followed by a shrinking, and the sorts of things that are being produced, and unfortunately falls into this area, tabloid style stuff. Okay, now my next question is now more around Dungeons and Dragons. I know there are a few people who have been like, why are you leaving that question to last? Well, I'm doing that quite deliberately. On my part, it's important. I think it needs to be done kind of last. And so we're now going to get into the stuff which I think is, I'm going to finish off with something more positive, but I definitely will discuss some of the other more, what do you call it? I don't know, contentious things, I guess. Let's say some of it's contentious. Anyway, let's have a look at chat before I move on to the next question. The next question I will be talking about is the official Dungeons and Dragons books being released by Wizards of the Coast in 2024. That's my next topic, okay? All right, so Phil, a lot of art and writing on the DM's Guild now is obviously AI generated. Unique crafted content stands out even more. Yes, and I'm not surprised, Phil. I would imagine that it's going to be easy to be able to see for some people what is worth the price that is being offered and what is not. I've already seen it being offered on websites where people are creating articles and material, and they're clearly using ChatGPT or AI to create that stuff because it's not very well structured, and they haven't edited it, they haven't refined it properly. Well, of course your ideas would be superior to AI. Exactly, Pale Rider, you know this, I know this. Not everybody does, though. Spawn. All right, I don't doubt that, Fred. Nina. Really? Yeah, no, sharks and snakes. It is very true that the community is actually becoming a little bit on the toxic side. You've got to be very careful about what's going on there. I heard the Joe Cat situation. You can convert anything to fantasy setting. Yes, you can. I can understand telling people how to run your game, but some people are venomous about how they think you should play an RPG. There's no wrong way to play a role-playing game. Yeah, well, I've always said it's none of my business how you play your game in your group. And that's always been my motto. It's always been, to be fair, every time I do something on YouTube, most of the stuff I do is filling in gaps, making lists, creating stuff, explaining stuff. But ultimately, when it comes to whatever you're doing in your group, in your space, I don't give a fuck what you do. I'm going to be honest. I've never really cared. I only care about what I do with me and my group. I really am not invested in what you guys are wanting to do. Whatever you want to do, however you want to run your games, I really don't care. It's not my space to work with. It is your space. But when you start going into the public forum, it's a bit rough. It really is. You're more of an old school player, but I really don't care about how anyone else plays the game. Yeah, I understand this. But and it's not just about that sort of stuff. Now, you also heard about Murphy nappers as well. Murphy nappers. No, I didn't hear about Murphy nappers, but it would not surprise me. There have been a few people. Toxic comments, abusive, yes, yeah. All right, Pale. So, prepare, cook, and survive. You've got a question here, I see. So let's answer that question. Let's get on with the D&D stuff, shall we? Will we see some of your home group play in 2024, Fred? Okay, so your question to me is, will you see my home group play in a video or a live stream on my channel? And the answer is my personal home group, absolutely not. Now, I will explain, I have explained this before, but that's my part of my life that I don't want to share. I'm going to be quite selfish about it and say it's part of my life. Hello, Dennis, how are you doing? OKSDM. Now, OKSDM is the publisher of Sagas, which I was talking about before, as one of the new tabletop role-playing games coming out in 2024. And hopefully we'll be playing it in 2024. I'm looking forward to Spaceballs and getting silly. So now there's another thing you need to understand about taking your home group into a public space. One, my group don't want to do that. You really need to understand something about playing with people privately. When it's your own friends, these are my friends. These aren't strangers anymore. I've been playing with them for a long time. Okay, I consider them my friends. Now, my friends aren't always going to say things that you will like. My group are very inappropriate. There is nothing that people will not take the piss out in my group. We swear, okay? We come up with, and we also get sidetracked on all sorts of silly things. Okay, we wind up talking about all sorts of silly stuff that would not be related to the game. None of them want to do it. And if they were forced to do so, they would not show up. And if they did show up, they would deliberately do things that would get me banned from the social media platform. Whether it's YouTube or Twitch, it would not matter. I've tried this before. I gave up on it because I realized that they were right, that this was their space and they did not want somebody else coming along with them. It's different with the Game Master Roundtable when we were playing a game with people who have agreed to do this live. We're playing live, we're playing in front of an audience. We're playing really for ourselves, but we do ham it up a lot in those Game Master Roundtables. But it's still, to a certain degree, sanitized. Whereas I can assure you it would not be sanitized. I don't want to air the laundry of all of my friends' troubles and traumas. We talk about each other's personal lives when we're playing. This is not a good place to stick it. on YouTube or anywhere else. So you can't expect somebody to share everything about them. Okay? So that's not going to happen. I think the question people have been asking and wanting for a while is, will they see me as a game master at some point in 2024? I'm not going to promise that I'll do it in 2024, okay? But I will say there is a high chance it may happen at least in the next 2 years. There's a reason behind that. There really is. There is a reason behind that, okay? Yeah. And that's all I have to say. So if you're wanting me to see me be a game master or a dungeon master, it will likely happen, but not necessarily in 2024, possibly in 2025. But it will probably happen in the next 2 years. There is stuff on my channel with me as a game master. It does exist. I just don't do it regularly. I just don't do a lot of it. I don't see much value in... I hate to say it, I've never seen much value in people watching people playing a tabletop role-playing game or D&D. I've always thought it's much more fun to simply play the game. Why watch it? That's just been my view. Anyway. Next. So Dennis has just said here, the balls will certainly be spaced in 24. For sure. We're Spaceballs Sagas in 2024. You can look forward to that. Yeah, my game sessions are very naughty. Okay, it's just, I'm an adult. I'm 50. Okay, all of my inhibitions are pretty much gone, but I don't want to air that all over YouTube or social media. Frankly, that's fair enough. Yes, I think it's fair enough too. Think about it. Would you really want to play your personal private game in a public forum where people can comment and you know? It's just not the thing to do. Okay, I watch it when I can't play it. I get it. If you can't play, you would watch. Fair enough. I understand that. Okay, let's get on to the next question. And our next question is, what official Dungeons & Dragons books is Wizards of the Coast releasing in 2024? Let us grab that question and put it down here. Did I put it in here? I did. There it is. Okay, so that is the next thing that I'm dealing with. I need some water. I'm getting dry. The good thing is that I am now on question 7. This one I should be able to answer fairly quickly. Descent into the lost caverns of Toshchakathan. I don't even know how to pronounce it. Okay, this adventure already existed. It is a reprinting. They're reprinting it. There's no release date in 2024, but Wizards of the Coast is going to re-release Descent into the Lost Caverns of Tenochtitlan. I think it's Tenochtitlan. I can't remember. I can't pronounce it. It doesn't look like English to me. This adventure already exists. Okay, we don't have a release date. Am I excited for it? Not even remotely, frankly. I'm not really that excited. We were reprinting an existing adventure for a new version of the game. You could go and buy this adventure off as a PDF or somewhere. You could probably even get it from Goodman Games, I'd imagine. And you wouldn't have to modify anything for 5e, frankly. I wouldn't think you would have to do very much at all. I think it's a waste of time. But it's certainly easy. They don't have to do very much work. They're just going to reorganize things, change up some of these the monster stat blocks, and yeah. So yeah, don't expect a review of this adventure from me, because I couldn't care less. But that's those of you who are excited about a review and renewed version of that adventure. At least if by reprinting it, one of the things that is good about the whole thing is by reprinting an old adventure that has already been written and updating it means that you help it survive. It now has two forms, not just digital, but now the physical form. As I was talking about, if you have physical and you have digital, the chances are that what you create will survive time. And so it's not a terrible thing, but I wouldn't say I'm excited about it. Okay, Vecna, Eve of Ruin. The release date for this is the 21st of May 2024. This was leaked. Okay, now this is supposed to be an adventure going from, I think, roughly level 1 to level 20. It's going to have Vecna in it. Am I excited for this? No, not really. I don't really see myself being hugely excited for this adventure. But then I've never been a fan of the long form adventure books that Wizards of the Coast put out. If you are and you wanted to finally have an adventure that was written for level 1 to 20, it is coming. There are other adventures. People have always said, oh, there's no adventures that go from level 1 to 20. That's not true. Dungeon of the Mad Mage by Wizards of the Coast goes to level 20. There are people who are third-party publishers that create adventures that go to higher level. They do exist. All right. Then we have the Dungeons & Dragons 5e Revised Player's Handbook, which I'm been informed is going to be larger, and it will be released on the 21st of May, 2024. This is probably the only publication that Wizards of the Coast will be putting out in 2024 that I will consider to review out of Wizards of the Coast stuff. I have no intentions of reviewing all of their books. I just don't see any point. Because often all I wind up doing is beating up on them. So I just don't want to do that, and it's not fun for me, and it's costly, and I just don't want to do that. But I might very well review that book that they put out. I don't know that that's necessarily going to be a good idea. We'll see. The making of the original Dungeons and Dragons from 1970 to 1976. Now, this has a release date of the 18th of June, 2024. That was leaked as well, accidentally. And this is just Wizards of the Coast retelling the history of Dungeons and Dragons. I am really suspicious of a book that is written by the company that currently holds the game. I know they have hired some historian people who know the game well, but they'll be, because it's being published by Wizards of the Coast, they're going to have some veto over what goes in there. They're putting some stuff that's original in there that's never been seen before, which is great. Yeah, but I'm always very reluctant to see that as a source of useful information when the current company, the way that it operates, is releasing a book. They're publishing it and getting somebody else to do the legwork. I just don't think you're going to get a very good book necessarily from that. I might be wrong. Who knows? But that's coming. We have Quests from the Infinite Staircase. So Quests from the Infinite Staircase is an anthology. It's a collection of adventures. It sounds to me like it is another collection of already existing adventures that have been printed in the past, rather than new adventures that have never been seen before. My suspicions for why this is happening is because they've had to spend so much time on the core rulebooks and updating them for the 50th anniversary. Okay, that's getting released on the 16th of July 2024. We'll see. I have always preferred the anthology books to the big campaign books myself. Just more useful. You can sort of block things together if you want. Not that I use most of the anthology books. I don't really use for Wizards of the Coast because they're still not my thing. But anyway. Then we also have the Dungeons & Dragons 5e Revised Monster Manual and the Dungeons & Dragons 5e Revised Dungeon Master Guide. Now, there are no release dates. Now, you might say, yeah, it'll be released with the Player's Handbook. I think that's unlikely. I think it's much more likely that the Player's Handbook will get released on the 21st of May 2024. We'll see the Monster Manual and the Dungeon Master Guide being released last. The Monster Manual will come after the Player's Handbook. I think that's much more likely before we see anything else. They did the same staggering with the release of Dungeons & Dragons 5e back in 2014. I think they'll do the same thing again. Whether we get the Monster Manual in 2024 or whether we get it in 2025, I don't know. Whether we get the Dungeon Master Guide, the new Dungeon Master Guide in 2024 to 2025, again, I wouldn't know. My understanding is a lot of the stuff has already been locked in. A lot of the work on both books has been done. They're just waiting for certain sections to be finished, and then it'll probably have already been printed, the stuff that they've locked in. I would imagine they've probably already printed part of the book. They do print their own stuff, right? So they're not printing all of their stuff, but they're printing some of it. So that is the official Dungeons and Dragons releases for 2024. So let's have a look at what people have to say in the chat. And the next question after this is a discussion around the new 2024 Dungeons and Dragons core rule books. And will they be as popular as 2014 when the original D&D 5e books were released? I'm going to answer that question next. But first, let's go through chat. Where we go. What do we got here? Nope. All right. So there's a lot of people who are not really interested. Better to participate. However, watching regular, we feel like you. I know you. Yes. I think you'd be surprised how many are interested in what you do. Well, I'm glad, but it doesn't show, Stuart. I'm glad there are some people who are interested. Carmen Graves. I don't care, but I have no shame. So we're going to get back to that. We'll talk about this in a second, actually, as it happened, Carmen. So your perspective, we'll certainly we'll get to that. But that's cool. What do you got here? I put one of AJ's gameplays on the in the background while I was painting, so I didn't actually watch it, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. You just listen to it. Why not? Drier than the Sahara. You reckon? Drier than the Sahara? I don't know. You would look cool with a Sherlock Holmes pipe while you talk. I do actually have one. I just don't want to stick it in my mouth. It's hard enough to talk as it is, Carmen Graves. Why am I saying Carmen Graves? Carmen. I've got one. I just don't want to stick it in my mouth. I don't smoke. Okay? Because it's not English? I see. Now, Phil. What have you got here, Phil? Lost Cabin is $5 on the DM's Guild as a first ed PDF. It is really easy to convert exactly to 5e. Or spend $40 for Wizards of the Coast to do it with a bunch of unneeded new art. And Phil makes exactly the point I would like to put forward. When you republish stuff you've done before, it's good to do it because you harden it against it being lost over time, just in case the digital form gets lost in some way in your servers or on your archives or on your storage devices. You've got physical copies out there that you can go and search out, okay? Which is what saved a lot of the stuff that is now on the DM's Guild. A lot of the older adventures and documents and books that were put out would have been lost to time otherwise, because they were scanned digitally. But you can also print them, which is great too. Vecna is a bit overused in my opinion. Well, Vecna has been really popular, which is probably why look, I think Chris Perkins has been heading this way for a while now. He's been dropping breadcrumbs about Vecna for a long time. I thought I was done with D&D, but Vecna is something I'd be interested in. And Stuart, that is fine. You get interested in the things that interest you. It's all good. In my opinion, Wizards are bubble wrap D&D too much. Yeah, there is a lot of bubble wrap around D&D right now, yes. I have no interest in buying their product. I'd rather take the time and build my own adventure. And I would prefer you to make your own adventures, frankly. Yep. But if you don't want to or don't have the time, that's fine. You buy something that you find useful. Again, I think you could say it's lazy, but I think it's because they've bitten off more than they can chew. That's probably why they've done that. They need to build a narrative around what they do for the amount of money that they want for it. Yeah, they do. Look, I think you'll find that Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro view their product as a high quality product, and therefore they want a high price, and they don't want to make small margins. The tabletop role-playing game community, third-party publishers, they have small margins. They don't make a lot of money off books and products that they make. And Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast want to make a lot more money. Okay, so that's why they're asking for big prices. They want a higher margin, and unfortunately, it's not really viable. Anyway, let's move on to the next question. Let's go with the next question, and this is the question that I posed because I've seen it being popping up all over the place. Will the new 2024 Dungeons & Dragons 5e revised core rulebooks be as popular as 2014, those book releases? So back in 2014, we had the release of Dungeons & Dragons 5e. And no question, it was highly successful. It was popular. It was selling out. It was a bestseller on Amazon. I wouldn't say that it had necessarily, because if you look back at how sales work, there is something to be said that potentially during the TSR reign, book sales might have been even higher than what 5e did. But nobody really knows. Nobody, because this information is hidden. It's not openly available to people. Okay, but let's say is the new 50th anniversary release of Dungeons and Dragons 5e revised going to be just as popular? And I have to say, unfortunately, I think no. The environment for tabletop role-playing games and Dungeons and Dragons has deflated. Not so much for tabletop role-playing games, but for D&D tabletop role-playing games has deflated. And to a large degree, I would say it's been deflated by what Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro has tried to do and the things they've done this year. Okay, it is not really possible for them to hit the same mark that they did before. The release of the new core tabletop role-playing games, look, every time you release the core books for any tabletop role-playing game, so releasing Dungeons & Dragons 5e revised, re-releasing it, okay, or releasing it with slight improvements or changes, will always mean there's will be an upsurge in customer purchases initially. There's always going to be an upsurge because book sales for Wizards of the Coast stuff has been dropping off because people know they're going to be bringing out new core rule books. So no matter how much they say it's going to be backward compatible, people have been buying less of their books. And if their products haven't been very good, they've also been buying less. And that's what has been happening. A lot of people have been buying less. I don't buy any Wizards of the Coast books, but I'm only one person. But I keep talking to people in the community and they keep telling me, I play Dungeons & Dragons 5e or I play Dungeons & Dragons, but I don't buy Wizards of the Coast books. So what are they buying? They're buying third-party publishers stuff that make 5e content, or they're making their own stuff. Now that's not everybody. But so I expect when Dungeons & Dragons 5e Revised gets released, the core books, the Player's Handbook, the Monster Manual, the Dungeon Master Guide, there will be an upsurge, as there always is, in customer purchases. Okay? But one of the things you've got to understand, that's just North America. That's not necessarily going to translate very well to the rest of the world. Because I can assure you that the book sales for D&D 5e or the revised book around the world is going to be much lower. If you look at how Dungeons & Dragons is sort of situated in the global scheme, the most popular place is definitely North America because it's an American game. Then Canada. Then after that comes Australia. And I would say even New Zealand. New Zealand and Australia might be on par. But the only reason New Zealand gets D&D books that are official to New Zealand is they get shipped to Australia first and then from Australia to us. Otherwise, we wouldn't get them. You'd have to buy them online. I know that sounds strange, but that's how it works. And the rest of the world, they're not that interested. They play other things. They might still be playing tabletop role-playing games, but it's not necessarily D&D. It'll be something else. There's another thing you need to take into consideration in terms of the new core rulebooks in 2024 being popular, is that Stranger Things, the Netflix series, is ending. And one of the reasons why Dungeons & Dragons has had such a great run recently, up until at least 2023, has been the spotlight of Dungeons & Dragons and Stranger Things, the Netflix series. That TV series has done very well. And its whole theme is around Dungeons & Dragons. Not just the kids in it playing Dungeons & Dragons, but the stories that they get involved with and all the people who are in there that aren't playing the game, they're actually still in a Dungeons & Dragons world, whether it's the Upside Down or it's the strange creatures they come across, it's still a Dungeons and Dragons world. It's still a fantastical world of some kind. So Stranger Things ends, you're not going to get it promoted quite so much. So you're not going to get people picking up the game as much. I would say a lot of people went from Stranger Things to playing Dungeons and Dragons just because of watching that TV series. Now, I've got no proof or data. I don't think anybody does, actually. But you can see the spikes when they release that TV series, and it does suggest that. I know Bob Wheelbuilder was mentioning that a little while ago, and I had a look myself, and it's like, it kind of makes sense. But, is Google Trends actually that accurate? I did my degree in psychology, mathematics, statistical mathematics, and philosophy. And I can assure you that it is easy to come to the wrong conclusion based off what you think is accurate data. And so, anyway. Also, Critical Role is diversifying their games, the games that they play. Critical Role has been a big part of promoting Dungeons & Dragons 5e. And what they present on Twitch TV and YouTube is going to be not just Dungeons & Dragons. They've actually started to do other things. So that means you're going to get a lot less people interested in playing that game. They're going to go and try out something like Candelera. The new game that they just put out. What's it? Candelera Obscura. And then the Daggerheart game. They're going to try out the Daggerheart game. Also, too, Critical Role has had a drop-off. There haven't been quite so many people interested in Critical Role. What they're doing right now, there has been a slight drop-off. Also, too, the Player's Handbook will be a lot more complex than the book that we got in 2014. So the new book, the Player's Handbook, is going to be more complex. It'll make it harder for people to learn, okay? Particularly if you're new. If you're not new to the game, you'll probably be able to figure it out fine. But if you're new to the game, it's another barrier to entry, yeah? Making the new core rulebooks larger and more expensive will also deter people from purchasing them. If you make something more expensive, if it's larger, it's more intimidating. It starts to look more and more like a textbook, which it already is looking like a textbook. So that's another problem. Another huge factor that is running sort of against the Dungeons & Dragons 2024 release, the revised rule, is the design team is running in circles trying to update one D&D or D&D revised, and they also try to keep it the same, so it's backward compatible. So you're trying to update the game, and you're also trying to keep it the same. It's an impossible task. It's asking way too much of any design team to do. And one of the biggest problems I think that the design team at Wizards of the Coast is suffering from is any innovative game design they might be presenting that would improve the game, presented by Wizards of the Coast design team, has been rejected by Unearthed Arcana survey results. Now, some of it has been an improvement, but I would say a lot of the core rule stuff, where it was very sensible put in place, in my opinion, they have rejected. And so Wizards of the Coast has seen that feedback and said, okay, we're not going to do that. That isn't good either, okay? Another problem that I think also the release of the Dungeons & Dragons revised rules in 2024 suffers from is the video game Baldur's Gate 3. Now, Baldur's Gate 3 is sort of like the top game for this year. It's got a lot of awards, okay? It's done very well. It's captured many people who were not happy with tabletop role-playing games on that experience, and now they're playing this video game. Surprisingly, even though Baldur's Gate 3 is Dungeons & Dragons, and surprisingly, even though Baldur's Gate 3 being a Dungeons & Dragons game, doesn't mean that you translate those people playing that game to the tabletop version. The transition over is not going to be great. Not a lot of people are necessarily going to go that way, okay? So if you're dealing with new people who want to play Dungeons & Dragons, a lot of those new people are going to discover that Baldur's Gate 3 offers a better experience to play solo, okay? Because you can't really play the game solo without a lot of messing around. It would be easier to just to play this video game, Baldur's Gate 3, right? So if you can't find anybody to play with, you can go just play Baldur's Gate 3. This is what people are doing. If you want to play with multiple people, you can play multiplayer in Baldur's Gate 3 and have probably a better experience, particularly if you cannot find somebody to be the game master or dungeon master. You do not need to have a dungeon master or a game master, okay, with Baldur's Gate 3. So I see a lot of the people who might have gone and played this new version of D&D 5e revised in 2024, probably not doing that. They're probably going to go and play Baldur's Gate 3. Really? Just because of the barriers that are set up. Now, the new rules are player-focused too. They've made that quite clear. So 2024, the core rules are player-focused. This runs the risk of scaring off people from being a game master or a dungeon master. If you put all the eggs in the basket for your players and there isn't enough balance to make it easier as a game master or a dungeon master to run the game, then there are less people playing the game because there aren't enough people being game masters and dungeon masters, which means they wind up going and playing Baldur's Gate 3 or some sort of video game. It's really simple. Okay? Now, although people playing Dungeons & Dragons, I can say right now, I think most people who play Dungeons & Dragons don't care what Wizards of the Coast is doing in 2023. Okay? They really couldn't care less. They just want to play the game. Okay? They have no interest in OGLs or artificial AI or anything like that. Or layoffs, people being laid off. They don't care about that sort of stuff. They just want to play the game. But how hard the game is for a dungeon master to actually run determines how many people will be running games. So the supply of your game master and dungeon master is determined by the number of people, okay, that can play. If you don't have enough people willing to be a game master or dungeon master because you've made it so player focused and not given the dungeon master enough tools to be able to make it easy, you need to make it easier, not harder. Okay, it can't stay the same, it must be easier. This determines how many game masters and dungeon masters play a tabletop role-playing game like Dungeons & Dragons 5e Revised is determined by how many people will game master. If you don't have enough game masters, not everybody gets to play. It's as simple as that. Now, if the 2024 game master, if the 2024 Dungeons & Dragons game can't convince people to be a game master and it isn't set up well, it's probably going to fail and it will get a small following. Traditionally, Dungeons & Dragons has never had a high following. It really never has. There's another problem that lies with the release of 2024, and that is whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, it was probably a bit of a mistake. So any company now, if you release something under Creative Commons, you've kind of let go of something completely. Yep, it's not much. You can't call it back. You can't say, oh, an OGL, we can take it. No, you're not even going to get into court with a Creative Commons. When you make something Creative Commons, it's done, okay? So any company or person can now republish a physical book of Dungeons & Dragons 5e rules if they wanted to. And they could do that under Creative Commons version 4. And they did not have to compensate Hasbro or Wizards of the Coast for doing so. Anybody, a single person, a publisher, heck, Kobold Press is basically doing that right now with Tales of the Valiant. Okay, I have no doubt that they'll use Creative Commons version 4 or they'll use the ORC license and just say, well, you can't copyright game rules anyway, it won't matter. We'll just rewrite it the way we want to write it. We won't copy and paste. And that'll be it. Or more likely, I would suspect that publishers will slightly improve the Dungeons & Dragons 5e rules, or even the 3.5 rules actually, and publish them under Creative Commons version 4. And as a closed game set. They could close that game set, allowing them to have a monopoly over that game system. I don't think that would work very well. I think as soon as you do that, you shrink your market completely by doing that. But there's a high risk, a very high risk, that a third-party publisher, after Dungeons & Dragons 2024 Revised 5e is released, that a third-party publisher is going to walk in, publish a better version of Dungeons & Dragons 5e under Creative Commons version 4. Wow, did I take a long time to get to that point? It's seriously, I think it's very, very likely. Third-party publishers are doing better jobs than Wizards of the Coast. It is so likely that somebody else will come out with a better product than they do. And then people wind up playing that game once they realize it's there. So bubble wrap is basically plastic little bubbles that have got air in them, and yeah, it's for packing and storing stuff so that things don't get damaged. That's what basically it means. I doubt it be. You never know. I suppose you never know. Yeah, Hasbro screwed themselves with the mess with the OGL. Yeah. I think it's not just that. I don't think that's the only thing. Creative Commons, making the game Creative Commons was probably a bit of a mistake too. I don't think it will be as popular, especially if it's based on sales. Well, also too, I think from what I can see, it looks like it is going to be a bit more complicated too, a bit harder to play. Yes, bubble wrap is wonderful. If you want to release stress, bubble wrap's the best way to go. With the new books, I don't see them changing much. That they couldn't just hand wave at the table. Well, that's possibly very true too. Participation trophies. Ah, dear. All right. Let's just quickly go through here, see if there's anything in chat that's actually important. We're moving on to the next question. Participation trophies in general. What are we talking about here? I'm lost. Solo play reminds me of Zork books. Yeah, choose your own path or fighting fantasy. Exactly. I had them for years because I didn't have anybody to play with. All right. Okay. Let's move on to the next thing. Next question. And this question is around the movie. I know some of you will have seen this movie. Some of you haven't seen this movie. So let's discuss that one, right? Will there be another Dungeons and Dragons movie made? So Honor Among Thieves, Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Among Thieves, as far as I'm concerned, was a very good movie, okay? That's the movie we're talking about. Will there be a sequel to that? Will there be a movie following after that? And I hate to say it, and you may know whether you agree with me or not, just hear me out. I think the answer is no, okay? Not anytime soon with Paramount. I don't think Paramount is in a position to be able to make another Dungeons and Dragons movie. Paramount had stated that they were open to making another Dungeons and Dragons movie, even with the huge financial loss that they were served with. They lost a lot of money on that movie, okay? Now, even if Hasbro or Wizards of the Coast put money into the movie with Paramount, it still lost money, and a lot of it. It was not a financial success, which is a shame, because I like the movie. So the Dungeons and Dragons movie simply costs too much to make, okay? Plus the marketing, because you've got to remember, it's not just the cost of production. You have to take into consideration marketing costs as well. The marketing was not good for this movie. They really needed to make it more generic rather than hone in on people who are D&D fans. Not to mention, when you release a movie at the theatres get a cut of that money as well. Okay, so whatever money it's made, it never made anywhere near enough money to even break even. It may have covered its production cost, but it will not have covered its marketing cost or even the cut that goes to the theatre when they play it in the theatre. It's just not popular enough. Dungeons and Dragons is just not popular enough as a brand. It will not draw enough people to it. Now, I love Dungeons and Dragons, but that is the reality, okay? Now, even though Paramount said, even though it took a financial loss, it would be willing to do it again, they also said they would have to make the movie and it would have to be cheaper. They would have to make it at a much lower price than they did originally. That's not a good sign too, okay? Because how much it takes to make a movie is how much it makes to make a movie. And I would imagine that this movie was actually reasonably well priced considering what's in the movie. That's another thing to consider. But here's the other problem. Even though the Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves movie was, I would say, a high quality piece of art. It was funny. It had a good story. I enjoyed the characters. It was fun. But just not enough people were interested to make a profit. Even though that's great, you've got to understand Paramount is either going to get sold very shortly, it's going to get broken up into parts if it doesn't get sold as a whole, or it's going to wind up being bankrupt in the near future. Paramount is on the verge of collapse. Okay? They have lost too much money over the years. They are not financially viable. So for a Dungeons and Dragons movie to be made, it would not be made by Paramount. And I don't think anybody is necessarily willing to take on the risk of Dungeons and Dragons as a movie. Not when they see what's happened in the past. There are 4 Dungeons and Dragons movies and none of them made money. None of them. Now, even if Paramount merges with Warner Bros., which is Discovery's taken over Warner Bros., because Warner Bros. Weren't doing very well anyway, but Paramount is going to merge with Warner Bros. Even if that happens, neither company's in a position to risk making another Dungeons and Dragons movie. Even Warner Bros. Has only got to a point where they're starting to pay back their debt. They have debt to pay off. Paramount is a mess. We just won't see another Dungeons and Dragons movie. It's unfortunate, but it's true. Okay? You just can't get away from the fact. Right, I'm going to have a drink of water, have a look through chat, and my next question, and this is, I'm going to apologize now. This is the I would say, the horrible question. Will Hasbro file for bankruptcy in the coming years? That'll be the next thing I discuss. Okay. I think it will be made. Pale Rider, I just don't see that there's money. There's no money to do it. It doesn't make sense. I don't see it getting made. I just don't see it getting made. I'm sure they will. It would depend on what the first. It doesn't. The first movie didn't make anywhere near enough money. I think it made about worldwide about 200 million. It cost about 150, so slightly over 150 million to make, plus marketing, which would probably be very high in the 50 to 100 million mark. Marketing is expensive, and then you got to remember the theatres also get a share of the profit. You got to take that into consideration as well. And yeah, I just don't think it's going to work out, unfortunately. Obviously, more fantasy movies that can be compared with D&D campaigns will be made. Yeah, we're going to get more fantasy movies, but not necessarily D&D movies. The good ones will not have been made to match the game. So yeah, Lord of the Rings was written long before D&D game existed. What you've got to understand is you can't compare Dungeons and Dragons to Lord of the Rings. That's one thing to understand about the movie. The reason the Lord of the Rings movies worked is because before that, there had been one other movie that I know of, an animated movie. It was not successful and it did not do well. It did not make a lot of money. It was financially a failure. And Peter Jackson made Lord of the Rings. He made all 3 movies all at once, and he convinced them he could make 2 movies for about $150 million, which is like nothing. And he did it in New Zealand because he knew he could make it cheaply. It's like making Westerns in Mexico because you can make it cheap. Yep. There were a lot of deals that took place to make that movie in New Zealand. Lord of the Rings would never have been made in America because it would never have been financially viable to do so. Now, here's the other thing that you've got to consider. Lord of the Rings is a story that has lasted for many decades. It's still printed. It is still one of the top purchased books in the world. It's still printed. And you can still get copies. They never run out of this thing. They keep printing it. That's how popular it is. and they managed to successfully translate those books into movies that people liked. And D&D is just not that. Yeah? I honestly, Sharks and Snakes, I was really impressed with Honor Among Thieves. It reminded me of D&D. It really did. I really felt like this was in the spirit of the game. It made sense to me. Movie was as good as Guardians of the Galaxy in my opinion. Phil, yes, I would say that's true. I would say, yeah, that's a good comparison. I would say that's right. Fred, I wouldn't watch the official D&D movie until the DVD is in Walmart discounted bin for $2.99. All right, okay. Yeah, the movie wasn't, yeah. So, Joe, you've got your feedback there. Cool. Yeah, a lot of people scared people away from watching that movie. So those people who wouldn't watch the movie, not only did they not watch the movie, they told all their family and their friends not to watch that movie. So the movie didn't have a chance. It really didn't have a chance. The movie was fine. Yeah. See, again, I don't really consider Dungeons and Dragons a serious story, but there's lots of stories you could tell. I was hoping for a Lord of the Rings style movie. Yeah, and I think that was not what their intention was. I can't imagine them using. Yeah, it would always be compared. The problem with doing that is it's always going to be compared to Lord of the Rings. How do you compete with that? I just don't think you can. Anyway, next question. I have 2 more questions to answer, and then I'm going to finish up. Here is a big one. And that is, will Hasbro have to file for bankruptcy in the coming years? Whether that's 2024 or after that, let's talk a little bit about this. It looks really highly likely that Hasbro is in major trouble. I think it's very, very likely that Hasbro might get sold. And if Hasbro doesn't get sold, I think it's very likely that it will be broken up into pieces too, and sold off in parts. Because sometimes a company is worth more in pieces than it is any other way. They've already tried. There's already been an attempt to break the company apart. Hasbro had shareholders trying to force Wizards of the Coast to be separated from Hasbro, because in many respects, Wizards of the Coast, Magic the Gathering, and Dungeons and Dragons, but not really Dungeons and Dragons, but mostly Magic the Gathering, is the only thing holding up Hasbro. That whole company is just not making money. So Hasbro's actually removed 1,900 employees. They did 800 earlier in the year. 1,100 have been scheduled. They're going to take place over the next coming months. Some have already gone. That's about 30% of your workforce for the company. That's a lot. This is likely to continue. I don't think we're going to stop at this 800 and 1,100. 1,900 people. It's just the tip of the iceberg. They're gonna have to cut a lot more. The problem being is they have to pivot away from the publication of books that don't really make money and toys that are definitely not making them money. And you've got a whole company that's built around people making toys and books. So 30% of your workforce is not going to be enough to cut back. You're going to have to cut back even more. It is not unusual for Hasbro or even Wizards of the Coast to fire people or let people go just before Christmas. It is a historic behavior that they have engaged in. They stopped doing a little bit of it because there was some legislation put in place to stop companies doing that, to make their final balance look better and improve their relationship with their their shareholders. But it is something they have done in the past. Okay, it is not something that is new. But the number of people they have let go, that is a telling mark. I think that's the biggest problem. 30% is really, we're looking to keep the company alive, or we're going to have to sell it off or file for bankruptcy. I think that's very much part of it. Part of the reason for terminating some of the employees at Wizards of the Coast, I would imagine, is that the majority of the work required for the core rule books, that are being released in 2024 has been completed. So what had happened before they released, they let go of these 800 employees, which were actually not connected to Wizards of the Coast, but the ones that are currently connected to Wizards of the Coast, and there aren't 1,100 of them, it's just a portion of that. Many of those people will be released because they're no longer required. The work that they were hired to do has been done. Well before that, when they started saying they're going to redo the book for the 50th anniversary, they started hiring people from Paizo. They were pilfering and pulling other designers and other people who were experienced from other companies into them. And now they've let them go because they no longer require them. That is what is kind of going on here, I think. That's sort of part and parcel of it. Now, the quality of something like the Hasbro toys, the books, the board games, they're bad. Like toys in particular, books have not been good either. Board games, not really of the same standard. Board games haven't been quite so bad in terms of quality control, but customers aren't buying them because the products aren't very good. They've got a real big quality control problem over there at Hasbro. And it has transferred itself over to Wizards of the Coast as well, unfortunately, in terms of cards, books, and other products. So people aren't buying those products. And the biggest problem is around their toys, because toys aren't very good. They're making low quality toys that tend to break, that don't do what they need to do. And also too, there's another problem with toys, and that is toys aren't necessarily what people are using nowadays. They're being made for the wrong people. You think toys, you think kids, and unfortunately, toys aren't really things that kids play with a lot. There are playing with some stuff, but they're not playing with what you might think. Anyway, warehouses. There are a lot of warehouses full of toys, books, and other Hasbro products that they can't sell. They can't get rid of it. They're going to have to dump it. They're going to lose a lot of money. There's a whole lot of production that had a cost that they can't recoup. They're going to have huge storage fee costs to deal with. I think more and more, the more I look at it, I think it's very likely that Hasbro is going to have to sell off some of the stuff. They've already sold off their entertainment division. I think they spent $5 billion and they had to sell it for $500 million, $500 million. So they lost a lot of money on that entertainment division. I think was it E1 or whatever the heck, I can't remember. It was so that they can actually make, movies and TV series and things like that. Hasbro doesn't have that now. So I think that the chance that Hasbro gets broken off into pieces and sold off, that they might even wind up selling some of their intellectual property rather than retaining it, because what has become obvious is having intellectual property doesn't guarantee an income that makes you profit. Yeah. I don't think Hasbro's in a position to pivot fast enough to capture the new customer interest or base. Customer interests have changed. There's a lot more digital focus, and this company is not a digital company. Okay, they sell physical products. What I will say is there's no chance Hasbro will sell Dungeons and Dragons or Magic the Gathering or Wizards of the Coast. Even if they were to break Dungeons and Dragons away from Magic the Gathering and split Wizards of the Coast into half, I don't believe that they would sell it. Either one of them. Because they're the only things that make them money, okay? They would have to be forced by a court or the banks to actually sell those companies, those properties, or the Wizards of the Coast company. And I just don't think that's likely to happen. Now, there's another problem with Hasbro, in that no one will buy Dungeons and Dragons. There's no company out there that has enough money to be able to pay the price that Hasbro or Wizards of the Coast would be sold for to another tabletop role-playing game company. There's just nobody in the industry who could do it. It's just not going to work. And unfortunately, that's a reality. I know people think, no, it's Dungeons and Dragons, it's a brand, it's Dungeons and Dragons is not $1 billion brand. It just isn't. Okay? It just isn't. And everybody who keeps saying this is getting proven wrong, because it doesn't do that. It maybe makes $100 to $150 million a year. That's it. Nothing more. Okay. Now, what about larger companies? Maybe if it's not a small tabletop role-playing game company that's going to buy up Dungeons and Dragons, what if a bigger company came along? Could they buy Dungeons and Dragons or Magic the Gathering? And here's the problem. Not so much with Magic the Gathering. Magic the Gathering is very appealing to a large company. It makes a lot of money and they've got a lot of control over it. So yes, that could potentially work, but that would be the last company that Hasbro would sell off. Okay, the last entity. Large companies would not consider buying Dungeons and Dragons either as a brand or as a game because it will not provide them with a reliable income source. They know this. It's proven. It just won't happen. There are just not enough things that they could do with it. Now, there's another problem with this that a big company would have with Dungeons and Dragons. And that is, it's particularly around the rule system. The rule system is connected to the open game license. And the open game license says that you can make something for this game and you don't need to pay the person who owns Dungeons and Dragons anything. Is if you're using the open game license, you don't have to reimburse them any money. You can just do that freely. And that's the only reason Dungeons and Dragons has really been as popular as it has been. Really is the open game license. It actually made Dungeons and Dragons more popular by doing that. But it's also a problem to sell it on to somebody else. They've made it worse, unfortunately. Because now, not only is the Dungeons and Dragons rule set that you currently have under the Open Game license, it is now under Creative Commons version 4. And it's the wrong Creative Commons version. It can actually now be, the rule system can be taken by somebody else, republished physically as a book, and there's no compensation as far as whoever owns D&D. But there's another problem. It's also under Creative Commons. In other words, anybody can do anything with it, whatever they like. A big, large company does not want that. It's really obvious. I don't know why people struggle with this idea. I know a few people seem to have think that's not an issue, but no. D&D is not $1 billion franchise. In fact, you couldn't even sell it for 20 million. You couldn't sell it for 30 million. Somebody did offer apparently a price of 20 million to buy D&D. Hasbro, Wizards of the Coast would not accept that. It's not going to happen. And because Hasbro is setting off to be a digital media company or a video game producer, really that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to follow this new course. This sounds a lot like TSR to me. It really does. It sounds like what TSR was trying to do, and it was not successful. And unfortunately, it did not work. And again, they're going to run into the same problem all over again. It just doesn't work, unfortunately. You have nowhere to go with this. Does that mean that Dungeons and Dragons will disappear? No, it won't. Dungeons and Dragons as a rule set, as a tabletop role-playing game, is now really hardened against loss. Okay? It doesn't matter what happens now, because what will happen is any publisher can come along and publish the game and it will continue to exist. Doesn't matter what Hasbro does, Wizards of the Coast does, and that's exactly what's been happening. We're literally, Shadow Dark's a good example. Tales of the Valiant's a good example, and it's going to continue. Okay? So, yes. I think the cast caught the shenanigans of actual tabletop play well in the movie. Yes, I believe this is regarding the movie. Yes, absolutely. I think the actors did very well in that movie. Absolutely. Why would Hasbro have to do this? Because they have a lot of debt. I don't think they'll be filing bankruptcy, but the D&D IP might be sold. No, that'll be the last thing they sell. They'll sell other things first. Because nobody will want it, and the other reason is that it makes them too much money. Yeah. Sharks and snakes are okay. People are just mean. Hasbro toys sales are down. Their old games are not popular anymore since people go with game apps instead of board games. Exactly, Fred. The people, kids are playing and adults are playing video games. and they're playing on apps, they're playing on their phone, and they have not pivoted properly. They didn't do it fast enough, and that's too late. It really is. Keep an eye on Hasbro stock. Hasbro stock has plummeted. It's worth so little now. I think it was over $100 about a year ago, and it's now under $50 a share. It's really not looking good. I hear there was going to be a Baldur's Gate 3 Netflix series. I don't think that's likely. I think that's very, very unlikely to happen. Okay. People, look, I know people saying Baldur's Gate 3 is a really successful game. Baldur's Gate 3 as a video game is made by Larian Studios, not by Hasbro or Wizards of the Coast. Okay. The other thing you've got to remember is Baldur's Gate 3 is not even in the top 10 selling games of 2023. It doesn't even make the list. Baldur's Gate 3 is not even on the top 10 highest selling games of 2023. If you have a look, it's not there. It won awards, but it didn't outsell other games in any way whatsoever. And what happened to all the people who licensed to Larian Studios? Almost everybody who was in the room with Larian Studios that licensed did the licensing for Baldur's Gate 3 that took about 6 years to make and $100 million to actually make and produce. And I think it's made about $200 million so far or something like that, roughly. Nobody really knows exactly the numbers. Well, guess what? I think that licensing agreement was a one-off payment. And I think that licensing agreement was a lot less than $100 million, which is why the people got fired who were doing the licensing with Larian Studios. Larian Studios isn't making all that money. There are two ways you can license a product. You can license it by paying a one-off payment, and then you get that you pay them whatever it is. Maybe it's $10 million, maybe it's less, and then they go off and make the product, and they reap all the benefits. They take all the risk, and they reap all the benefits. Or you can have a licensing agreement, and this is very unusual to have happen unless you have a really hot property, and it would have to be hotter than Dungeons and Dragons, literally. You'd have a license agreement where you have a one-off payment and a percentage that you get paid. And I don't think that Wizards of the Coast or Hasbro is getting a percentage of anything that Larian Studios makes. I think I think Larian Studios made a one-off payment, and that's all they got out of it. And that's why all the people in that room who did the licensing are no longer with the company. Okay? I think that's probably what happened. It's only just a guess, but I'm guessing that's probably what happened. I hear, no. Here we keep going. A bit off point, but I think parents need to stop giving kids phones and tablets at such a young age. Well, good luck. That's a hard one. The cuddly bear and the horny bard. That's a funny one. Okay, last thing while I'm here. This is my last question that I will answer for this year. And I've been here for a little while. I've answered a lot of stuff. Let's put in their last question. Here it is. Wow. Now, with all of this going on, what are my plans with How to RPG in 2024? What am I going to do on my channel? I'm going to do this fast because I'm running out of power. So first off, my intention is to continue refining and running the Running Adventures live streams. So on my Sunday in New Zealand, I run running adventures, and we cover different locations. And I think there's a lot of value in doing that. I don't want to stop running those. I think that we'll keep doing them as long as I possibly can. And we might change the topic to a certain degree. I might cover specific adventures. But yes, I'm definitely going to do the Running Adventures live streams. That's introducing quests, dealing with caves, dealing with towns and villages, villain lairs, castles, dungeons, mines. I've closed down the Ghost Town one, and we're now doing Mage Towers and Arcane Towers. Okay, and I might spread it off to a different topic later on. So I'm definitely going to continue running that one. There will definitely be more of the Game Master preparation live streams. I find them quite useful. I think everybody else finds them really useful. I don't want to stop doing them, so I have no intentions of doing so. The end result is that means that we will continue as part of the Game Master preparation live streams, continue making and building adventures so that you get used to doing it and you can be part of it and we can hang out and do it together. We'll keep making non-player characters, we'll keep building monsters, keep creating locations, magic items. I'll still do the learning to improvise stuff. We'll still create skill challenges, although in 2024 they might be called more like adventure challenges. Okay, it's just a challenge. And then world building. So yes, and when I say skill challenge, really I do kind of mean simple puzzles, traps. It all sort of goes into the same sort of bucket, if you ask me. I'm definitely going to continue covering Esper's Emporium of Esoterica and the monster lore for the monsters in his book. I'll keep doing that. I said I would, and I don't tend to stop. Even though they have not been very popular, I'm still doing them. Okay. Make more monster homebrew tools. We're going to do a lot more monster homebrew tools. I'm not stopping that. We've been doing a lot of that. We're going to continue. We're going to make some monsters in live streams as well. We started doing that in this year. We'll do that again next year. I don't plan to stop doing that at all. Character creation for every tabletop role-playing game that I can learn. We're going to go over as many different character creation processes as we possibly can for every game I can get my hands on, as long as I can learn it and understand how it operates. Explain and demonstrate as many new and old games as possible. Okay, Shadow Dark, Mork Bork, Pathfinder 2nd edition. These are definitely scheduled for 2024. Shadow Dark, Mork Bork, Pathfinder 2nd edition. This is where I use maps, miniatures and dice and demonstrate the rule. Yep. We'll be revisiting some of the old tabletop role-playing games that I've already covered this year. So I'll go back over Hero Quest, I'll go back over Star Wars Saga, the role-playing game. We'll go back over Dungeons & Dragons 4E, Mork Bork, stuff, or versions of Mork Bork, should I say. Basic Back Me Dungeons & Dragons, and also Dungeons & Dragons 5e. Yep, I'll continue doing that. I'll do the redesigning. I'm going to continue the redesigning of the Dungeons & Dragons 5e classes that I started this year. That will continue. I will do some improvements on Mazes and Monsters, the game rule set that I started putting together, which is basically a clone of D&D. I'll be doing some design work around tabletop role-playing game tools, but there will be no formal publication from me in 2024. There may be in 2025 though. I think that's my time schedule for that at this present time. I don't think I'm going to be able to do it sooner than that. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully Fred's only fans. Ah dear. How's it? What do you got here, Shiner? You spilt. Did I? What did I do? What did I do? It was funny. What did I do? Looking forward to more of Esper's monsters. You spin on them is awesome. Well, sometimes I spin and sometimes I don't. Sometimes it's just a reimagining. Sometimes it's just a translation. I'm going to say sometimes I just have to translate what Esper's done. I find myself having to translate more than anything else. Yeah. That's it. So let's finish off this poll. I think this poll is done. Let's have a look at what we've got here. That was everything that I have for wrapping up 2023. Yep. Do you have a tabletop role-playing game you are excited to play in 2024? Yes, 63%. No, 13%. Interesting. Okay. Just watching, 13%, and 9% undecided. Okay, out of 22 votes. Fred, I love it if you did a seaside or dock city port town or a pirate island shady ports. I think a dock town would be a good idea. A port town, I like that idea. A pirate island, I have already been thinking about that a little bit. I don't know how to do that exactly. I don't know what I would bring to that, but I agree, Joe, that's a good idea. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to let you get on with your day. We've done what we need to do. So let's go and get on with our day. Hopefully, now this is the only time that I really want to talk about all that other stuff, because some of that was kind of icky. Do you know what I mean? Some of that wasn't very good stuff. Anyway, this is it. I'm done for 2023. No more of the past. We are moving on. It's time to cook them marshmallows. So, thank you to everybody who's been watching and listening and commenting. I want to thank everybody who took part in the poll today. I do appreciate it. I want to thank my patrons. Very important. My patrons really make a difference. Okay? Without their support, it really would have been a huge struggle. It continues to be a struggle, but at least makes it a bit easier. And the good news is that before the end of next year, I should have paid off my mortgage. And it's a good thing too, because I am a mess. Anyway, I want to thank everybody who took part in the chat. Prepare, Cook and Survive, Shiner81, Overboard, Sharks and Snakes, Fred Huber, who's been hanging out with us pretty much in every single live stream under the sun, Chris Broskett, who was here as well, and if I've missed you, Phil, I can't forget Phil and Overboard. Phil, thank you. And look, if I've missed you and I didn't call you out in the live stream, I do apologize. There's been a lot going on. Carmen Graves, I forgot about Carmen Graves. It was not my intention to do so. There's just a lot of information, and I've been here way too long. Oh, that's right, OKSDM. Almost forgot about OKSDM. Yeah, I can't forget about that person. It's going to be an interesting year. I can say that now. Okay, so wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, the night, or the wee early morning, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours. Oh, and Shy X, almost forgot Shy X. And till next time, have a good new year and keep rolling those 20s. Derp! I forgot Derp. Thank you for reminding me about Derp.